Good morning. It's Friday, November 14th, 2025. You're watching DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. Good morning, John. How are
Hi,
you?
everybody. Morning, Ted. Doing well, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. For everybody who's wondering about today's topic, I promise you it is a little silly, the thumbnail, but it is based on actual science. They've tracked Hitler's DNA, and they found out stuff about his genetic coding, and he really had a interesting mutation. We'll talk about a little bit of business to take care of. First of all, this is the last official day of Robbie-lessness. Our producer, Robbie West, thanks to you guys, will be back here on the show. He'll be joining us in a little bit, and he'll be here starting as of the very beginning of the show, starting on Monday. This is like the transitional day. But thanks to you guys. Please like, follow, and share the show. Please watch us on Rumble. Robbie will come on and explain why next week again for people who are just joining us. Lots to talk about today. We've got censorship scandals at two major universities, Texas A&M and Indiana University, where basically quote-unquote woke professors are being cracked down upon by university administration. John Fetterman took a fall. His health is not good. We'll talk about that. And John, I know you're going to have thoughts about this DOJ memo that is being used by the White House in order to justify the attacks against alleged narco-terrorists in the Southern Caribbean and the Eastern Atlantic Ocean. And of course, there's little Adolf and his possible micro penis. There, I said it. What do you want to talk about first, John? Oh, before we do that, there's a question in the Rumble feed that I really wanted to. It went on literally just went on right a second before. And the question is from Tariq. Is the 2000 election the most consequential in recent history? The butterfly effect from the hanging chads is crazy. John?
Wow. Yeah, good question. I would say, yeah. I would say 2000 was far more consequential than we realized it was. And as we lauded Al Gore for just, licking his wounds and walking away, maybe he should have fought harder. Of course, what are you going to do once the Supreme Court makes a decision? But yeah, that's a good observation. I also wanted to say something too. Yesterday on the show, Ted, we talked about immigrant visas now being denied for fat people. And a State Department consular officer reached out to me last night and sent me the following, which is important enough for me to read in its entirety. So, right. Hi, John. I'm a consular officer and a regular DeProgram listener. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for covering the new visa restrictions. One point that's being overlooked. The recent immigrant visa change isn't really about denying obese applicants. That's media simplification. It's fundamentally about excluding poorer applicants under expanded, quote, public charge considerations. We're now required to assess whether an applicant is likely at any point in their life to rely on government cash assistance or long-term publicly funded care. This pushes us to deny types of immigrant visas that historically have been approved at roughly 90%. The administration's goal of the new policy is to get us to say no more without changing the underlying law. That's important. Under the new guidance, for example, a rich, obese Saudi applicant can readily show that they won't become a public charge. A Ghanaian math teacher with high blood pressure who wins the diversity visa lottery may no longer meet the threshold, even if otherwise eligible. Keep up the good work. Loyal listener. So thank you very much for clarifying that. It's very important. And he or she is correct that the media are oversimplifying this issue. So appreciate being set straight.
Never see that before. That's really a good explanation here. Yeah, I mean, we've literally, John, thank you for that. We just reported a little bit of news here. And, obviously all countries are concerned about your ability to support yourself when you apply to not necessarily be a tourist, but when you come to work or whatever, especially if you're planning to stay for a long time. They always want to know. I mean, I know people who've moved to Canada and they had to prove that they had financial assets and all. So this does seem to be like a roundabout way, no pun intended,
Yeah.
of doing that. Um, John, what do you want to talk about first?
What do I want to talk about? I'd like to talk about the absolutely awful John Fetterman.
Let's do it.
So he made a joke. John Fetterman was walking down the street yesterday in Braddock, Pennsylvania, where he used to be the mayor. He's from Braddock. It's a dead steel town outside of Pittsburgh. He's going for a walk. He experienced atrial fibrillation, which he has had in the past. He has a pacemaker, and he momentarily blacked out. When he blacked out, he fell down. He landed on his face, and he said on Twitter, "You thought my face was ugly before. You should see it now."
Or someone said on Twitter under his name, maybe more accurately.
Yeah, probably. That's probably the likelihood. And so Ted's question at the beginning of this segment was not rhetorical. Is Fetterman going to resign? He's clearly not fit to be a senator. And I don't mean just physically. I mean, temperamentally, the man's not fit to do the job. There's no indication he's gonna resign. His term takes him to 2028, but he's currently hospitalized in Pennsylvania and claims to be fine. We'll see. Mental stroke and heart attack and atrial fibrillation and this guy doesn't belong in the Senate. He belongs in a nursing home.
Everything that you're saying is 100% true. And it's hard for me. I'm actually pretty good at teasing out usually my antipathy for someone's politics from just the human connection here. But I think even if we set aside, even if we didn't know anything about his health, right? If we are his employers, and we are his employers, this is a guy who doesn't really show up to work very often. He misses a lot of votes. He doesn't ever meet with constituents, according to the reporting in the New York Times. He can't keep staff. His marriage appears to have blown up because of his change in temperament. Whatever's going on with him, in terms of his physiology, appears to be affecting even his political stances. Like he suddenly pivoted to becoming a rabid, sort of anti-Palestinian, pro-Zionist, and it appears to have some kind of link, according to his wife, to what's going on with his, mental health. If I were, I would say put him on, full pay, but let him stay home. And the people of Pennsylvania need a full-time senator. There's no political reason not to do it because the governor isn't the governor a Democrat of Pennsylvania?
It's Shapiro, Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, Josh Shapiro would appoint his replacement. So there's no change in the balance of power politically. And so I don't know. It just seems like, I can hate John Fetterman's politics, and I think he's seems like a really unpleasant person, and at the same time really have compassion for what he's going through. It can't really be good for his efforts to recover to have this job or be trying to do this job.
No. I agree.
Maybe, I don't know. Is there any ability to sort of have a temporary senator step in, sort of have a person take a leave of absence and then say, hey, let's check back in 3 or 6 months. And then if things are good, you can come back.
No, there's no provision for that. You're either in or you're out.
Maybe there ought to be.
Yeah, maybe there ought to be.
Because I can imagine all sorts of scenarios. There kind of is for the president, right? there's the vice president. Let's say, let's say you have a car accident and you need 3 months to recover, but you're good. You're fine after. Well, Reagan was shot. Okay, there you go. And, he stayed president. That was in his first year in office, and he remained president and finished out his term. And obviously we won't talk about his mental state the last year or two, but certainly he was able to do the job after that. U.S. Senator and for that matter, I would say a member of the House of Representatives should also have there should be some kind of provision for that.
There should, and there isn't. Now, what happens more often than not when a senator resigns? A more or less temporary senator is named in his or her place, and a special election is called. The special election is usually the next national election. So if let's say Fetterman were to resign today, a senator would be appointed by the governor in his place. The special election would be held in November of 26 to fill the term until November of 28. And then there'd be an election for a full term. There was, when Robert Byrd died, the West Virginia senator, the Democrat who used to be the majority leader, when he died, a senator was named to replace him, but was only senator for a month. And then there was an election. Yeah.
Yeah. When Hubert Humphrey died, when he was a senator from Minnesota, didn't his widow get appointed to the job?
Muriel Humphrey. She became a senator.
And then, so Manya the Cat is asked a follow-up about the 2000 election. And this is a question that I have seriously wrestled with for years. Why didn't Al Gore fight harder? It's weird for ambitious politicians to just go like that. And, I think I have an answer to that. So Donna Brazil, I signed her for syndication when I was at United Media. And she came in and we talked about this. And she was Gore's campaign manager. She was in the room at 9 o'clock at night on election night, November 7th, 2000. And she, and they're all watching TV and watching the returns. And she sees the vice president pick up the phone. She asks someone, who's he calling? And she was told, oh, he's calling Bush to concede. And she said, what? And she walked over, and with the old fashioned landline phone, she hung up on Governor Bush. She just clicked the receiver and screamed at Gore, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck are you doing? This isn't over. It's the polls just closed in California. And obviously it wasn't over for the better part of 40 days until December 20th, when the Supreme Court finally ruled on Bush v. Gore. But she told me Gore didn't have the fire in his belly. He didn't really want it. He didn't, if it was proffered to him and he could just walk in and get it, sure, he's willing to work for it. But he didn't have that, I'm going to get this fucking thing no matter what.
We should have known that the moment he chose Joe Lieberman as vice president.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. And also, and even distancing himself from Bill Clinton after 2 years after Monica Gate, and things had clearly, his poll numbers were back up, and Clinton would have been an asset to the campaign. It was a shit show. I mean, and you just think, John, of all the things, the way that our lives, talk about the butterfly effect. You probably never would have gone to jail. I probably would have never been fired from the LA Times. I mean, all sorts of things are different. Today, we're going to be talking about this DOJ memo. These Venezuelans wouldn't be being blown up because of this memo that echoes the torture memo authored by John Yoo under George W. Bush, who wouldn't have been president if Al Gore had fought. I mean, I think Al Gore could have rallied the troops. He could have rallied the American people and said, I've won this campaign. I won the state of Florida. And that's what the Bushies did. They fought hard in the court of public opinion. And I think that's part of the reason. I know Sandra Day O'Connor, as the deciding vote, wanted to retire under a Republican president and be replaced by a Republican president. So there's a lot of things going on. But he didn't fight. I mean, think about it. We have more SUVs on the roads than ever before. Would President Al Gore have allowed that to happen? A guy who cared more about the environment than anything else? No. I mean, the world is in a much worse. We're not at the COP conference right now. That wouldn't be true if Al Gore had been president. There's a million things that would have been we would never have invaded Iraq. Maybe we might have bombed Afghanistan, but we never would have invaded Iraq.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Yeah,
it's
the whole world is different because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of am really pissed at Al Gore for that. It's like, dude, you had a responsibility to the Democratic Party and to the American people to fight for this. And then, of course, I've got to do this rant. I'm sorry, I've got to do this. It really always bugged me that the people around him were so stupid. You know, when he filed Bush v. Gore, he asked for a recount only in the Democratic counties in Florida. Okay, idiot. If there's an undercount of Democratic votes, it's going to be in Republican counties in Florida because they're dominated by a Republican vote counting apparatus, and they're going to undercount Democrats.
Right.
You should have just asked for, and that gave the Supreme Court their way to rule against him under the Equal Protection Clause. They should have said, you know, count the whole state. You know, obviously, it's the state of Florida. Recount the whole state. It's like, God.
That's right. The whole state.
Duh.
Yeah.
So, and now we know that, you know, Al Gore probably would have won by 15 to 20,000 votes in the state of Florida. There's no Ralph Nader issue. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Ralph Nader did not make the difference. It's been completely debunked.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Hey, want to thank Scott A. Britton for the very generous $50.
Wow.
He says, thanks
you.
for a great show. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Seriously. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Tarek.
Let's see. Oh, F you so. Who will replace Fetterman? Well, I mean, I agree with John. He's not going anywhere unless he dies.
I don't think he's going. No. Here's a good question from USC XXX A-Rod 21. To be fair, would we still say that Fetterman was unfit if he fell in line and voted along party lines? I think if he didn't go against the grain with the Democratic Party, this story gets no play. There might be something to that. I think at the end of the day, it would be the Republicans complaining that he's unfit. And now, you know, it's funny too. So many of my Republican friends, when Fetterman was first elected to the Senate, and he had his mental crisis and was hospitalized, the memes were absolutely vicious.
Yeah.
And then he started voting down the line, pro-Israel, supporting, you know, the Republican position on so many of these international issues and international economic issues, and the Republicans went silent. And then it was the Democrats who started criticizing him. I think that he's going to be criticized either way, one way or the other, whether it's from the right or from the left. I've been grossly disappointed in the guy's voting habits.
And this is not why he was. I'm sorry. I don't think the people, look, you're Pennsylvanian. I don't think the people who voted for him voted for this.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Dr. Oz has to be throwing shit at the TV every morning.
Yeah, that's right.
Like that fucker's right. has my job. As we
and you know what? I'm surprised at how much it has bothered me, Ted. But I'm really greatly bothered by the fact that the guy dresses like a slob.
I hate
and then
that.
Tries to go onto the floor of the U.S. Senate.
It's disgusting.
It's classless.
Yeah, and it's
Buy
like
a fucking tie
I would feel different.
And bump it up.
Agreed. I mean, look, if he last time I saw someone who dressed like that regularly, it was a dude who had a colostomy bag after being hit by a car. Okay. But even so, and he doesn't have a colostomy bag. And if he did have a colostomy bag, he could just wear loose fitting clothes, right? I mean, if he had open collar shirt, okay, I could live with that. No tie. Although I'm partial to ties. I have a great collection of beautiful vintage ties. But it's like, you're right. It's disrespectful. To me, it's like when Zelensky showed up in his, tracksuit. It's just wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong. I agree.
Yeah, I know it's surprising, right? We're small C conservative that way, but yeah. Yep. John is from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania. That is correct. Answering James Turner's question. Let's see. I would have preferred Dr. Oz. He has all the I think. I mean, look. Dr. Oz was running as a conservative. It turns out there were two conservatives running for that office. So
yeah. There were. And, Tarek asks a good question here too, Ted. Is there no dress code for Capitol Hill, the second most consequential building in the world? There actually is quite a clear dress code.
Yes.
In the House, men have to wear a jacket and a tie. Women have to wear a dress.
Mm-hmm.
In the Senate, they had the same rules, and they changed them. Schumer changed them just for Fetterman.
It's ridiculous.
And that's
and why?
Wrong.
I mean, he doesn't. There's no health reason for it, right? It's just like,
no,
I'm a big lumbering oaf, and this is how I like to dress.
Even when Biden was campaigning in Pennsylvania, there's Biden at the podium. There's Josh Shapiro with a suit and tie behind him, and Fetterman behind him over the other shoulder, and he's wearing a friggin' hoodie and shorts, gym shorts. It's just
and the thing
awful.
is, I mean, I really have to put this in its proper cartoonist perspective, because that's my job. He doesn't even wear like a good tracksuit. He doesn't look like Al Sharpton in the 80s or like Run DMC.
No.
I mean, this is like literally.
No, Al Sharpton. That was
a uniform for him.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was like, it's like,
so like exactly.
This is literally the lowest level clothes you can wear and still be technically considered to be not naked.
Right.
You can dress that way and not be arrested outdoors.
That's right. Moro M, thank you for the $10. Says, John, saw your latest interview on the whistleblowers on big food and big pharma. If you ever wanted to dig deeper, you should talk to Brigham Bueller from Ways to Well about the medical devices scam in ORs. We reached out to Brigham Bueller actually, and are trying to get him scheduled. So thanks for that, Moro. That's a great idea. That would be a good interview. Yeah, thank you.
All right, what should we move on? Lots to talk about.
I'm just not getting it. I'm just waiting to see in Pennsylvania who steps up to run against him. A friend of mine says that he believes Fetterman's going to have some Democratic primary opposition, and it might be somebody strong.
Let's hope so.
I don't know who that could be.
Pennsylvania has a deep bench, so
state auditor.
A lot of people we may not have heard of here nationally, but certainly, yeah. Should we talk about this DOJ memo? I'm kind of dying to.
This is bad news. Very bad news.
So for people who missed this, go ahead, John.
Go ahead. No. There's a delay. That's why it's.
That's why we're kind of stepping on each other here. So the Department of Justice. So basically, when the president wants to kill people in a situation like this, off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia, it needs to be justified by an internal Department of Justice memo. The last time this happened was during the drone wars, when and John Yoo and during the global war on terror, John Yoo, who was he assistant attorney general or
no, he was director of the Office of Legal Counsel.
Okay, so he's kind of the president's lawyer, but not his private lawyer. And he drafted that infamous torture memo, basically justifying all the the stuff that you exposed, John. And that that memo was. I mean, John Yoo he's on Fox all the time. He's considered like an eminence grise of the legal profession, instead of sitting in a prison cell in The Hague where he belongs. And so now this is the same sort of thing. There's this 40-page memo that basically accepts at face value these very patently untrue arguments made by the administration that state that we are in a state of war effectively against these cartels, and that these cartels need to be stopped by any means necessary. Also, in addition, that the countries down there, like Colombia, have need our help to fight the cartels, and so therefore, as we have an obligation to help our allies, and that effectively we're already engaged in combat. None of these things are true. The countries down there do not want us there. They've explicitly In the case of Colombia, the president has called this murder of his nationals, and so anyway, it's very disturbing that the memo went so far, in terms of it's such, I hate to say it, tortured logic.
It is tortured logic, and it's very dangerous because the premise on which the memo was drafted is false. The premise is that the president has irrefutable intelligence indicating that these are indeed drug transport boats, and no such evidence exists. There is no intelligence to indicate that they're drug trafficking boats. So somebody's dropped the ball, and innocent people are being droned to death.
And the thing is, I guess it's we're finding out, these days, all the ways in which our constitutional system has shortcomings, and this is one of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the president wants to do something, even though obviously it's illegal or unconstitutional or both, you can just get some dumb lawyer to write a memo for you to give you legal cover. And the purpose of this, right, this is for the underlings who are given an order to kill these people, and they say, hey, I don't want to be prosecuted. I don't want to, after Trump will be gone someday, and then they'll come after me when then some fucking Democrat is the president, and I don't want to deal with that. It's like, don't worry, you're covered. You have this memo. This memo is your get out of jail free card. If the shit ever hits the fan. That's really.
That's what OLC does.
And you can't do it. And the thing is, there's no workaround. There's no body to which, say, the widow of a Venezuelan fisherman who gets blown up can go and say, hey, that's wrong, and I need a higher ruling here. I need someone to say that memo is bullshit, and no, there isn't cover. There's just no way around it, right? I mean, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's why the U-Bible memo legalizing torture was so important, because it indemnified every single one of the monsters involved in that program. That's why none of them went to prison. None of them. And now we have the current problem with John Brennan.
I mean, detail question. So very shortly after he took the oath of office, Obama went to Langley and sort of gave a speech where he effectively said, don't worry, bygones are bygones. And even though my policies may be a little different in some respects, although they weren't really, we won't prosecute anyone for stuff that they did under Bush. Why did he do that? Why did he feel the need to do that if they had the U memo? John, you're a little frozen here. If you can hear me, John, you are frosified. Well, this seems like a good moment to bring in Robbie West, who's making his grand return. John, please refresh and we will see you. Robbie West, thank you so much for...
I'm back.
He's back, just in time.
Yep.
We're waiting for John to defreeze. Welcome back. It's good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
You're a liberated man from...
I am.
After having... So in a way, you owe a favor to the person who doxed you, because now you're liberated.
That's very true. And I just want to give a true and heartfelt thank you to all the people who gave on Give, Send, Go to make this possible. Truly, I mean, and sincerely, I mean this. Thank you very much for all y'all support. Those of you who gave on Patreon, that type of thing. I mean, the easiest thing in the world, and I told this to John and to Ted both, the easiest thing in the world for them to have done to be to cut bait, let me just go. They didn't. And that's one part of it. The other part of it, though, is because of y'all, because without y'all, I can't pay my bills. And so truly, thank y'all. A lot of folks who gave, I read y'all's comments. A lot of y'all said y'all don't agree with me on much. You know what? The same is true. I don't agree with y'all on much either. But that's a good thing.
Ooh, that's a strange echo there.
Yep. That's off John's side.
Okay.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, John, I think you're getting feedback, I think.
Yeah, I know.
You're like, I know what feedback is. It's cool. It sounds like 1970s German experimental music. While you're troubleshooting that, John, I'm going to go ahead and hit an ad because we need to do that. Do not make any blah 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 blah. Oh my God, there's all these. Okay, here we go. There's so many references here to. Okay. It tells you not to do. God, this is so weird and annoying. Okay, Blue Chew chewable tablets are made with active ingredients found in popular ED medications, but in chewable form and at a much more affordable price. No waiting rooms, no pharmacy lines, just a quick online visit. And once approved by a licensed medical provider, Blue Chew sends the chews straight to your door. Look, guys, Blue Chew is the upgrade button for your sex life. Level up and get your first month free at bluechew.com. And we've got a special deal for our Rumble listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use promo code Rumble. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code Rumble. All plans include an online health assessment, prescription medication if appropriate, monthly refills, and ongoing medical support. A prescription will only be written if deemed medically appropriate after an online health assessment with a licensed professional. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. All right. Let's see if we can get John back here. John.
There we go.
Third time's a charm.
Okay.
Okay. So do we have anything more to say about the torture memo? And Robbie, I'm kicking you back out.
Okay.
Bye, Robbie.
Okay.
No, I mean, the problem is with OLC, the Office of Legal Counsel. They can say anything they want, they can do anything they want, and they can decide that anything they want is legal, even when it's not, even when there's precedents to show that it's not legal. And we end up in these situations like we did with torture, and now we're doing again with the bombing of these boats off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia. Now, another thing, as we were starting the show this morning, there was a breaking development on CNN saying that the president was in a meeting with the National Security Council right then at 9:00 Eastern, talking about his military options. The purpose of the meeting was to brief him on his military options in Venezuela. So this is not good.
And there's a big aircraft carrier off the coast of Venezuela, or at least about to be there. We have to speculate. It's Friday. These things usually happen on a Friday or a Saturday.
Yeah.
Are we possibly going to see, I would say not a ground assault, not a Bay of Pigs, but are we going to see, an aerial bombarding campaign kind of Kosovo style over the weekend?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. I'll tell you what I think won't happen. We will not send large numbers of ground troops. I could see us sending a small number of special forces to take the presidential palace, to take the TV and radio stations, and the main military and national security base. And then you want to just kind of shut down the major streets, the major intersections. Maybe you allow Maduro to fly off to Havana or something. Maybe you don't. You try to capture him, a la Manuel Noriega. But I wouldn't be surprised if this thing ends, rather quickly.
It's a little depressing, to be honest.
It is.
It's also, I don't think, will there ever have been a war with less, there's no lube here before the president slips it in. I mean, it's literally, there's been no effort, at least to give Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld credit for lying to the American people over and over to try to justify it.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump doesn't even talk to the American people about this at all. I mean, I guess it's a political exercise. Can you effectively wage war without any popular forget popular consent, without popular knowledge?
Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't do it. And his base does not want a foreign entanglement. The base is clear. It's America first.
Yeah, there's been some interesting coverage lately about how the base is really restive, right? I'm always cynical about this. They're like, okay, so the base is pissed off about the aid to Argentina. They're pissed off about the president's obsession with foreign affairs. They're pissed off with the fact that prices have not come down, and that doesn't seem to be focused on affordability. But what are they going to do? They're not going to vote for. They're not going to vote for Gavin Newsom, right? I mean,
No.
It's not going to change anything in a two-party system. The Republicans have the same calculus the Democrats have. You're stuck. You have to vote for us, or not. They just won't vote at all.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's what we're looking at.
Apathy is when you're one of two parties is always your enemy here. So I like Godna brings up this point. This is going to be a green light for China to take Taiwan. Is it?
I don't think the Chinese want to take Taiwan by force.
No, I agree.
I really don't. I don't think they're interested. I think that they really believe that eventually Taiwan is going to join peaceably.
I think they have every reason to believe that.
Yeah, I really believe that's the case.
They have a friendly government in Taipei to deal with. They've had long-standing. I mean, they have a lot of economic and tourist exchange between the two countries. Last time I went to China and I flew into Beijing Airport, there was a friend of mine who could read it, said there was a big banner when you arrived in arrivals that said, "Welcome to our Taiwanese brothers, well, to the People's Republic of China. Welcome home." So,
Wow.
it's not an enemy. It's not an
Wow.
enemy situation. The Chinese just figure, it's a cliche for a reason. They take the long view. They're like, we'll get it later. We'll get it,
Wow.
Let's see. Manya the cat. Thank you, Robbie, for putting this up. Trump is probably going to get overconfident, thinking he can overthrow Venezuela in days, and U.S. gets stuck in yet another years-long conflict. This has happened over and over again.
Yeah, I could easily see that happening.
I can see that.
It's never ever as easy as we think it's going to be. Never, except maybe the Gulf War.
Yeah, that was although Highway of Death, not so easy on them.
Well, no, not on them, but that's my point.
Yeah. Well, Powell was right. Overwhelming force, flood the zone, plan for the aftermath. You break it, you own it. He was right. He was a weasel in many other respects, but yeah. Shall we, before we get to the controversies in academia, which I think, are worth teasing out. And plus, if you're just joining us, thanks for joining us. Please like, follow, and share the show. And Robbie's back, and Robbie's funded for the month of November, thanks to you guys. But we are fully funded back on YouTube, and we are doing well on Rumble. And John, you just went faded to black. So if you hear me,
Robbie, no, I hear Robbie sent me a message, but while I'm on the phone to read a message, you have to go to black.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. Bummer. Let's see. Question for you, John, from Enzo. Don't mean to derail the conversation, but I'm waiting with bated breath to hear your thoughts on Giuliani receiving his pardon and what his $2 million payment equivalent might be to Donald Trump.
Oh boy, oh boy.
This can you should do you want to punt on this one?
Yeah, and I'll explain why. I've applied for a presidential pardon. I have spoken to literally everybody in the president's orbit. And I'm close, man. I'm that close to the point where I'm going to actually meet with two of them next week.
Wow.
And so I think I probably should punt that one.
All right. Well, let's just punt that. I want to elucidate one thing. It's just to clarify. I think the pardon for Giuliani is largely, isn't it basically more symbolic and ceremonial than anything else, because he's
facing state charges.
Right. So the pardon's not really going to do him lots of good, except his lawyer can go to the state court and go to the judge and say, listen, he's been pardoned for this federally. Please take that into consideration. And apparently sometimes they do.
Yeah.
it's not a get out of jail free card by any means. And if the judge has any animus for Giuliani, then that'll be that. Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about Hitler, and then we'll get to the academia stuff, because the Hitler thing is super interesting. So this researcher basically bought at this. Here's the chain of evidence. So Hitler blew his brains out while sitting on a sofa in a bunker under Berlin, under what is currently a parking lot. I don't know what it is with all these dead despots found under parking lots, but he killed himself in the bunker in 1945, April 30th. And obviously when you do that, it makes one hell of a mess. And so the sofa was soaked with his blood, and a lot of Allied troops traipsed in and out of there. One of them, I believe a staff sergeant, carefully removed a piece of cloth, and it stayed with Hitler's blood on it, and it stayed in his family for many years until about 15 years ago. It was sold at auction, and it came into the possession of this genetic researcher who decided it'd be interesting to test Hitler's DNA to see if there's anything interesting in his genome. To verify that this is in fact his DNA, because it could have been someone else's, they compared it to one of Hitler's living relatives. And he doesn't have any direct heirs as far as we know, but he obviously he had cousins and so on. So it turns out that this is by the way not been, I'll caution, this hasn't been peer reviewed, but it seems pretty likely this is true, that he has this mutation called PROC2, which is linked to something called Kallmann syndrome, which is delayed puberty. I'm not really clear on how delayed you're talking about. I had late puberty. I didn't really, nothing much happened until I was 16, and possibly undescended testicles and micropenis. So we do know there's always been rumors that he was a self-hating partial Jew. That's definitively ruled out. He has no Jewish ancestry, no Ashkenazi or otherwise. But anyway, and so also, you have the genetic marker for Kallmann syndrome. Doesn't mean you have Kallmann syndrome. But there had always been this, sort of rumor that the Allies spread that he had one testicle, but there was never, that's just something that they made up for wartime propaganda. We do know his valet, who changed his sheets, wrote a book that my mom sent me like 20 years ago, because she and I were both, avid students of history. And in the book, Hitler's valet, who said, I changed the sheets, said that Eva Braun and him had a normal, quote unquote, sex life. Okay, so of course, people with a micropenis can have a normal sex life. But it's interesting as hell. It also, apparently, there's much higher chances, like, in other words, 99% in the top 1 percentile, if you have this genetic marker, for your chances of having schizophrenia. I don't think there's any, from what I've read, I mean, I have a shelf groaning with books about Hitler. I don't think there's any evidence that he was schizophrenic. Autism, I doubt it. ADHD, I could see. Those are all things that that are associated with Kallmann syndrome. And so, obviously, the world is always trying to figure out what the fuck was wrong with Adolf Hitler, and why was he the way he was. And I've always said the real terror of Adolf Hitler is that there was nothing wrong with Adolf Hitler.
Yeah,
he was just a politician,
right?
But what do you think, John, of all this? What do you make of it?
Well, let's talk about this. This is a 2-part. It comes from a 2-part documentary that is running on a network in the UK. The Guardian has been reporting on it. I find it to be absolutely fascinating. One of the things that I find fascinating is there's always been this general belief that Hitler was partly Jewish through his father's side. What this investigation found, that his father was actually the illegitimate child of Hitler's grandfather, or I should say a grandmother. And so Hitler's paternal grandfather was not the man that we've always We don't have any idea whoever it was, he wasn't Jewish. I find that to be fascinating. Now, we know that, but Hitler didn't know that. Hitler thought he was part Jewish.
Right,
So
that's
it may
true.
have been, in part, self-hatred. This gene is called PROC2. It's responsible for what they call a well-known but rare genetic disorder called the Kallmann syndrome, which delays puberty. Look, we don't know. We don't know if he had a micro penis or a giant penis or undescended testicles or descended testicles or one testicle or whatever it was. But I find it fascinating that we're still talking about this, 80 years after the fact. I find
Yeah,
it fascinating.
it's totally fascinating.
And
And
this is also the first time that anybody has actually confirmed that they have possession of Hitler's DNA. There's a Holocaust denier in the UK, Irving something. His name escapes me now, and he had
David Irving, I think, is his name.
David Irving. He had what he called a lock of Hitler's hair that he sold at auction 10 or 20 years ago. And it turned out to be hair from some random guy. It wasn't Hitler's hair.
Of
And so the
course,
whole DNA thing was a bust. This is Hitler's DNA. They
for
are
sure.
100% sure. And the way they are 100% sure is Hitler still has a couple of cousins on Long Island, a couple more cousins in Ireland. And they all provided, even if reluctantly, they all provided DNA to cross-match it. So this is Hitler's DNA.
Russia might also have his DNA, right? Because
Russia 100% has his DNA.
his body was burned on the on the ground level above after he committed suicide, but the Russians took the skull and what was left. They grabbed everything they could. The Russians denied it for years. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union, they confirmed that it was in the archives the whole time.
Yeah,
there's that great punk song, "They saved Hitler's brain."
I talked to a very high-ranking, the highest-ranking KGB defector ever in history, Oleg Kalugin. He lives not far from me. I wanted to have him on my podcast, but he's 86 years old now. And anyway, we somehow got onto the topic of Hitler's skull. And he said that Hitler's skull sat on the desk of the head of the KGB at least until 1979. He was in that office in 1979, and he saw Hitler's skull on the desk, and he said, "That's not Hitler's skull." And the head of the KGB said, "Oh, it's Hitler's skull."
I had heard something similar about that. So I don't know where, but in some kind of, I guess lots of people have been in and out of that guy's office. So over the years, so you could imagine it's a trophy, right? Didn't George W. Bush get Saddam's pistol as a trophy also?
Yeah, the gold-plated pistol. Everybody took trophies. I have Osama bin Laden's paperweight from his desk.
What is it? What is it? What's it made of?
Big honking chunk of lapis lazuli.
Ooh, that's not just UBL, but it's also a nice piece of
it's absolutely stunning. It is so bright blue, it'll take your breath away, and it's flecked with gold. It's filled with pyrite, so it's like shiny gold sheen to it.
That's mined in Afghanistan.
Yeah, mined in Afghanistan. I took it right off his desk.
I'm really every now and then I discover stuff that my ex-wife took in the divorce. And she took my giant chunk of lapis. It doesn't have the same cool provenance as yours.
But lapis is expensive and it's hard to get.
Yeah. It's I just discovered like a few days ago that she took one of my favorite watches. I collect watches, and I was like, "Oh, what a bummer!" But it's like, you took the Windsor, really? You took that? I hate you. Anyway,
real quickly, Adam Tube 2, send me a message right here through the show, and Robbie will forward it to me. Okay, thanks, Ted.
Sir Bikes a Lot says, look up Peter Levenda's book, Ratline. He says that Hitler died in Indonesia. Makes a good case for it. Justice Thomas, Nazi lover friend, and him were in Indonesia for a time. I call bullshit on that.
Yeah, I don't believe that. It's like the hunt for Martin Bormann. For so many years, it's like Martin Bormann was seen hiking in Bolivia. Martin Bormann was seen in a restaurant in Brazil. Actually, now we know Martin Bormann was living in Cairo. He was an advisor to Gamal Abdel Nasser. He wasn't hiding.
Right. And well, Dr. Mengele, right? He was the one.
Yeah.
I mean, The Boys from Brazil is based on him. Gregory Peck plays him in an amazing performance, just fucking astonishing.
The Boys from Brazil.
Great movie, even better book, Ira Levin. Ira Levin, God, what a great author. I mean, the Stepford Wives.
Yeah.
It's just so great. Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, classic.
He knew how to crank them out.
2 ago. Yeah.
Roman Polanski, so good.
Yep. Filmed entirely in the Dakota.
Yeah, so cool. It is a sinister. It is, it's funny because I've been in the Dakota and it's not sinister at all when you're there, but in the popular mindset. So I mean, I guess the thing is, do we want to? I mean, there is a risk that if it turns out that we were able to prove that Hitler, let's say, had ADHD, that then people might start to say, look, you have the same thing Hitler did and whatever. I mean, Hitler did have some of the traits, though, that I associate with my friends who have ADHD. Like, he liked to sleep late and stay up late. He kind of had this always had this bohemian lifestyle. He loved to just pratter on and talk and he loved the sound of his own voice, like in private, and to the point where his secretaries would be bored to death. like Greta, oh no, this is so it is terrible. He does not stop.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, you know what, Ted? Let's talk about this just for a second. The bigger picture here. So we find out that he had ADHD. We find out that he had this Cramer's syndrome, whatever it's called. Or we find out he had, a micro penis. So what?
Who cares?
As
far as we know, Adolf Hitler never killed anyone. Maybe his cousin, right? Who he was supposedly interested in sexually.
Yeah, in love with, yes.
Maybe. Probably not, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing is, I mean, Adolf Hitler, what's interesting about Hitler is what he got other people to do. And, and how he convinced them and how he propagandized them and spread his message. Yeah. It's not about I think the danger is when we view someone like that as a monster. And then it's it exonerates the people of Germany or the human race in general who doesn't deserve to be exonerated.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
Couple of comments that we should get to the academic thing. Love you guys. Thanks, Nagla. Any thoughts on Egypt and the current regime? It's a good question.
It's a good question. I was talking to a prominent Egyptian day before yesterday. I want to protect his identity. Anyway, he operates in the highest circles in the Egyptian government. And he was telling me that corruption remains a great problem in the country, just like it always has. But compared to Egypt at the start of the Gulf War, when there were 55 million people, there are now 120 million people in Egypt, and they just can't accommodate them. There's not enough housing. There's not enough food.
So they're definitely not taking the Gazans.
No, and they are not. Well, that was the whole purpose of our conversation, was to talk about Gaza. They're not taking one single Gazan, not one. And he said,
so why is the population why is it exploding so dramatically? Is that a sign of optimism on the part of the Egyptian people about the economy, or is it just that they just like to fuck and they don't use birth control?
Men can't keep their hands off their wives. I saw a meme the other day on Facebook. This woman was pregnant, and another woman says to her, "Oh my gosh, you're pregnant again?" And the pregnant woman says, "Yeah, it's my 5th one. There must be something in the air." And the first woman says, yeah, it appears that it's your legs.
or two of them. That's awesome. Real, thanks for the $2. Iran seized an oil tanker heading from the UAE to Singapore last night. How do they benefit from this seizure? Well, they get attention.
Yeah, they don't really benefit. And what happens? This happens every few months. The company that flags the vessel will eventually pay a fine, and then the Iranians will just let it go. Sometimes they steal the cargo, sometimes they don't.
So
But
it's just a shakedown.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about these two cases, and I think it's worth talking about, even if just for a few minutes that remain. So Texas A&M and Indiana University are both cracking down in sort of different ways on liberal professors. Texas A&M votes is prohibiting. This one's the more worrisome one to me. They have a policy against advocating race or gender ideology without the specific approval of the president of the university. The problem there is I don't like rules that are hard to follow or understand. And
Yes.
And if you're a professor, it's hard to say, how, like, what exactly is race or gender ideology, even what
Right.
it means, much less what advocating it would mean. That's a problem. I mean, that seems really a little bit Stalin-like, right? Like, you should just know what Comrade Stalin would want you to do or not do, or say or not say. It seems like it would be hard to function in that academic environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to agree. There's no agreed upon definition, but any definition I think is dangerous. I really do.
Same thing with Indiana. Indiana has this like new, this professor, Jessica Adams, she's been suspended. She'll probably be fired because one of her students contacted a senator from Indiana, Jim Banks, to complain. One student who was made uncomfortable. So this is like basically right-wing snowflake. By she showed a graphic that showed MAGA as one of several forms of covert white supremacy ideologies. Even if we just stipulate that that's wrong and that's, she shouldn't have done that. I mean, academic freedom has to allow you do and say things that are wrong and that you shouldn't do, right?
That's right. That's right. And without that academic freedom, we're not going to have people like Noam Chomsky or Cornel West or, whoever the comparable right-wing professors are. Universities should be places where we have what is truly the free exchange of ideas, whether it's from the left, from the right, from the center. It makes no difference to me. I had professors from all over the ideological spectrum, and they didn't teach me to believe what they believe. They taught me how to think critically on my own. And that's really what going to college is all about.
That's beautiful. That's exactly the way I see it too. John, I mean, honestly, I don't know about you, but if I were approached to teach at a college or university, unless I were granted tenure right out the gate, I don't think I could really do it because of
Zero job
both
security.
the left and the right censoring you. It's happened to a friend of mine at University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, who's and she went through hell over some woke bullshit as a professor, and she's a big liberal. But it's a toxic environment on America's colleges and universities.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I teach at 2 universities right now. I teach at one called Bay Path, which is based in Massachusetts. I do an online class and on intelligence, and at the University of Salamanca in Spain, I do 2 classes, one on intelligence and one on the history of terrorism. And no one has ever approached me to tell me that I can or can't say something. And frankly, if I was told that I can't say something, you know what? It's not worth the $3,000 a semester.
Nah,
They
yeah,
can just
like,
keep
fuck
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not worth $100,000 a year. It's like,
No.
fuck it. All right, guys, it's that time. It's the end of the show. It's the end of the week. Hope you have a great weekend. John, have a great weekend and
You too, buddy.
relax. Thanks for watching us. We are DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou, and we come to you live Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We will be back Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We will have producer Robbie West right out of the gate helping us so things run a little more smoothly than they have been under my flawed guidance. Thank you so much, and we will catch you next week. Bye, guys.
Great. Bye-bye.